Hey YouTubers, welcome to the Cyber Overwatch channel. I am Pragmatic1. In this video, I will be doing a walkthrough of TryHackMe's GameZone vulnerable host. This is a beginner to intermediate level room themed around gaming, and it covers some genuinely practical real-world techniques, particularly around SQL injection, hash cracking, and SSH tunneling to expose internal services. Let's get into it. In this walkthrough, I'll cover the complete attack lifecycle: reconnaissance, enumeration, exploitation, and post-exploitation. Specifically, I'll perform port scanning, SQL injection via manual exploitation, and SQL map, credential hash cracking with John the Ripper, SSH tunneling to expose a hidden internal service, and privilege escalation via a vulnerable service running as root using searchsploit and metasploit. If you find this content informative and you are interested in cybersecurity, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to the Cyber Overwatch channel. Also, for more free content, please regularly check back on www.cyberoverwatch.com. GameZone is a vulnerable host created by TryHackMe. It simulates a Linux web server running a PHP-based gaming portal backed by a MySQL database, with several real-world misconfigurations that an attacker can chain together to achieve full root compromise. Let's break down the attack surface using the MITRE attack framework. T1595.002 Active Scanning Nmap. Nmap is used to identify open ports and enumerate services on the target host. T1190 Exploit Public-Facing Application. The GameZone web portal login form is vulnerable to SQL injection, allowing an attacker to bypass authentication without valid credentials. T1110.002 Brute Force Password Cracking. A password hash extracted from the backend database via SQL injection is cracked offline using John the Ripper. T1572 Protocol Tunneling. SSH port forwarding is used to tunnel an internal service running on localhost through the SSH connection to the attacker's machine, exposing a hidden web admin administrative panel. T1068 Exploitation for Privilege Escalation. A vulnerable version of WebAdmin running as root is exploited using a known CVE to achieve a root shell on the target system. The GameZone host has been deployed and its IP address is visible on the TryHackMe dashboard. The first phase is reconnaissance. Let's identify what's running on the target host before I start probing. I'll fire up Nmap with a full port scan using the following command shown in the CLI. I've broken these flags down in previous videos, so I'll keep it moving. If you are interested in understanding these flags, feel free to check out my series on Nmap for a full breakdown. The scan comes back with two open ports. Port 22, SSH. The service is currently up, OpenSSH 7.2p2 on Ubuntu. No credentials yet, so this isn't my entry point right now, but I'll check back later. Port 80, HTTP. An Apache web server is running. This is my primary target. Apache 2.4.18 on Ubuntu is a fairly old version, which is a good sign for an attacker. OS detection confirms this is a Linux host running Ubuntu. Two ports, clean attack surface. The web application on port 80 is where I'll start. Navigating to port 80 in the browser loads a gaming-themed web portal, the GameZone site. There's a login form front and center. Before I try anything against it, let me check the page source for any hidden fields or useful comments. Reviewing the page source, there is nothing immediately useful. The login form posts to a PHP endpoint. The presence of PHP plus a login form usually indicates a backend database, which may make this a textbook SQL injection candidate. Let's test it. SQL injection is one of the oldest and most consistently impactful web vulnerabilities in existence. It appears in every edition of the OWASP Top 10 for good reason. How it works. When a web application takes user input and incorporates it directly into a database query without sanitizing or parameterizing it, an attacker can inject SQL syntax into the input. This causes the database to execute attacker logic rather than the intended query. Authentication bypass. The classic use case against a login form is supplying a username apostrophe or 1=1 space dash dash space dash. The injected apostrophe closes the string, or space 1=1 makes the where clause always true, and the double dash comments out everything after it, including the password check. The result is the query returns the first user in the database and logs you in without a password. Impact. SQL injection can lead to authentication bypass, full database read and write access, credential extraction, and in some configurations, even OS-level command execution. It remains one of the most reliable and destructive web vulnerabilities a penetration tester will encounter. In order to test the login form for SQL injection, I'll supply the classic authentication bypass payload in the username field. I use the following payload shown in the login and just type some random characters for the password. The login succeeds and I'm redirected into the portal authenticated as the first user in the database without a valid password. With this test, SQL injection is confirmed. I'm now inside the GameZone portal as an authenticated user. I can see a search functionality on the page. This will be my next target. Now that I have confirmed SQL injection, I need to capture a legitimate search request from the authenticated portal session. I already configured Burp Suite with the necessary target and proxy settings. It's pretty straightforward. You need to set your target scope, which is the target URL. You also need to set your proxy settings, which includes how and what requests and responses you want to intercept. I'll perform a search in the search portal and use Burp Suite to intercept the request. With Burp Suite intercepting, I captured the post request. I'll just save the request to a file called request.txt and pass it to a tool called SQL Map to perform further SQL injection attacks. SQL Map is a free open source penetration testing tool that automates the detection and exploitation of SQL injection vulnerabilities. Core functionality. SQL Map takes a target URL or captured HTTP request and automatically tests injection points using a wide range of SQL injection techniques, including Boolean-based blind, time-based blind, error-based, union-based, and stack queries. It supports every major database management system, including MySQL, MS SQL, Postgres, Oracle, and SQLite. What can it do once injection is confirmed? SQL Map can enumerate databases, tables, and columns, dump table data including credentials, read and write files on the server, and in some configurations, executes operating system commands directly. It's an extremely powerful tool that compresses hours of manual work into minutes. With the request saved, I'll run the following SQL Map command shown in the CLI. I've already confirmed the application is vulnerable to SQL injection. I want to investigate further to see if I can extract data from the backend database. I'll use SQL Map, the automated SQL injection tool, to enumerate the database and extract user credentials. SQL Map worked through the injection techniques and successfully enumerated the database. It identified the database, the tables, and dumped the contents of the user table. The output reveals a username agent47 and a password hash. SQL Map exported the password hash and username to a CSV file and documented the location in the output. I ran the copy command to copy the user.csv file to the downloads folder. I ran the cat command to view the contents of the user.csv file, and I can see the password hash and username. With the password hash in hand, the next step is cracking it offline. I'll use John the Ripper, one of the most widely used password cracking tools, combined with the RockUText word list. But first, I'll save the hash to a file. I ran the following echo command shown in the CLI to create my hash.txt file. John the Ripper, often just called John, is a free and open source password cracking tool that has been a staple of penetration testing and CTF toolkits since the 1990s. Core functionality. John performs offline password hash cracking. It takes one or more password hashes and attempts to recover the original plaintext by testing candidate passwords, hashing them using the same algorithm, and comparing the results to the target hash. It supports hundreds of hash formats including MD5, SHA-1, SHA-256, bcrypt, and TLM, and many more. Modes of operation. John supports 3 primary modes. Word list mode tests each entry in a provided password list, such as RockU.txt being the most commonly used in CTF and pentest scenarios. Incremental mode performs a brute force attempt across all possible character combinations. Rules mode applies transformation rules to word list entries, for example, appending numbers, capitalizing first letters, or substituting characters, dramatically expanding coverage. Why it matters. Password hashes are frequently recovered during penetration tests from database dumps, configuration files, Active Directory, and memory. John converts those hashes into actionable credentials that enable lateral movement and privilege escalation. To help me identify the hash type, I ran the hash through hashes.com. Hashes.com determined that the hash was SHA-256. With my hash.txt file created, I'll run the following John command shown in the CLI. After running the command, John cracks the hash quickly. The plaintext password is returned in the output. With the plaintext password and username in hand, let's try SSH. I'll run the following command shown in the CLI. SSH authentication succeeds, and I can see that I am logged in now as agent47. Now that I am logged into the target host, I ran the following chained commands shown in the CLI to verify who I am logged in as. I also changed directories to the home directory of the user I am logged in as, and also to view the contents of the home folder. Looking at the output, I confirmed that I am the agent47 user, and I can see the user.txt file containing the first flag. I ran the cat command shown in the CLI to view the contents of the user.txt file. With the user flag captured, I now need to escalate to root. Now that I am logged in as the agent47 user, I need to do some host enumeration in order to find an escalation path. One tool I like to use is LinPeas. It does an amazing job at enumerating hosts. It's not perfect. There are some instances where it missed some vital information, but I'd rather have it than not. LinPeas downloaded successfully, but in order to use LinPeas, I need to upload it to the target host. I started my HTTP server using the following command shown in the CLI. With my HTTP server running, I just need to run the following wget command shown in the CLI to download LinPeas to the target host. Wget completed running, and looking at the output, it looks like linpeas was uploaded to the target host successfully. I also ran the ls-la command to verify that the file was in the /temp folder. I've confirmed that linpeas is on the target host. Now I need to run it. I'll run the following linpeas command shown in the CLI. The -a does all checks and the -e does extra enumeration. Linpeas provides a lot of good information, including a service that is running on port 10,000 that was not detected on the nmap scan. This indicates that this service may only be available on the internal system. There is also a mention of local forwarders in the output that I will investigate further. linpeas found a service running on port 10,000 internally. I ran the command shown in the CLI to verify the open ports. It looks like the service on port 10,000 is bound to the local host and it is not exposed externally. Port 10,000 is commonly associated with WebAdmin, a web-based Linux administration interface. Let's confirm this. To access the internal service from my system, I'll use SSH local port forwarding, a technique that tunnels a remote port through the SSH connection to a local port on my system. I'll run the following command shown in the CLI. I was able to log in successfully. Now let me see if I can access the service on port 10,000 from my web browser. SSH tunneling, also called SSH port forwarding, is a technique that uses an established SSH connection as an encrypted conduit to forward network traffic between ports. Local port forwarding. The command SSH-L local port remote host remote port user at target instructs the SSH client to listen on a local port on the attacking machine. Any traffic sent to that local port is forwarded through the encrypted SSH tunnel to the specified host and port on the remote side. This allows an attacker to access services that are only bound to the local host on a compromised machine. Why this is powerful. Administrators frequently run internal administrative services, database management interfaces, monitoring dashboards, internal web applications, bound only to local hosts under the assumption that they are not externally reachable. SSH tunneling completely defeats this assumption once a foothold on the machine is established. Real-world relevance. SSH tunneling and port forwarding are core techniques in both penetration testing and real-world threat actor playbooks. Tools like Chisel, Ligolo, NG, and Plink extends this concept to full network pivoting in environments where SSH isn't available. In this engagement, we have SSH access. In this engagement, I have SSH access, so the built-in -L flag is all I need. With the tunnel established, I can now navigate to http://localhost:10,000 in my browser of my system. The tunnel forwards the request through the SSH connection to port 10,000 on the target. The page loads and I confirmed WebAdmin is running. Now that I have confirmed that the service on port 10,000 is Webmin, I need to determine what the version is and if there is a possible exploit available. The first thing I need to do is see if I can banner grab the service with nmap. I will run the following command shown in the CLI to do a thorough enumeration of Webmin service. Since I set up the tunnel, I can use it to scan port 10,000. Based on the output of the nmap scan, it looks like Webmin is version 1.580. Let me see if there are any published exploits that I can use. With Webmin 1.580 confirmed and accessible through the SSH tunnel, let's research whether the version has any known vulnerabilities. I'll run the following searchsploit command shown in the CLI. Searchsploit returns a result. There is a remote code execution module in Metasploit for this exact version of Webmin. The vulnerability appears to allow an authenticated attacker to execute commands on the server as root because Webmin runs with elevated privileges. Now that I know that Webmin exploit is a module in Metasploit, I'll need to run msf console to start Metasploit as shown in the CLI. With Metasploit loaded, I performed a search using the Metasploit command shown in the msf prompt and found a couple of results. Since show_CGI_exec is the only exploit, I'll go with that one. In the msf prompt, I typed use 0 and pressed enter to select the exploit module. With the exploit module selected, I now need to configure it to execute. I ran the following commands shown in the msf prompt to set my remote host IP, remote host port, username, password, and I set SSL to false. With those parameters set, I now need to select a payload. I ran the show payloads command to view the available payloads for this exploit. As can be seen in the CLI, there are several payloads to choose from. I typed in the msf prompt to set payload 6 and hit enter to set payload to payload/cmd/unix/reverse. With the payload set, I now can set the local IP, local port for my shell. I entered exploit and now I just need to hit enter to execute. After hitting enter, it appears as if the exploit created the shell. I type who am I and hit enter and it shows that I am root. Now I need to stabilize the shell. I ran the following Python command shown in the CLI. As can be seen in the prompt, I confirmed that the shell returned root. Privilege escalation is complete. Now I need to find the final flag. I ran the following command shown in the CLI to change directories to the root home folder and to display the contents. It appears I found the root.txt file based on the output. I ran the cat command to display the hash stored in the root.txt file. The root flag is captured, full system compromise is achieved. Thank you for watching this walkthrough of TryHackMe's GameZone. I executed the full attack lifecycle, starting with an nmap scan that surfaced in Apache web server, testing and confirming SQL injection on the login form to bypass authentication, using SQL map with a captured burp suite request to dump credentials from the database, cracking the recovered hash offline with John the Ripper to get SSH access as Agent 47, using SS to discover an internal web admin service on port 10,000, establishing an SSH local port forward to expose that service on our web browser, and finally exploiting a known web admin version 1.580 vulnerability via Metasploit to land a root shell. What makes GameZone particularly valuable is the SSH tunneling step. It teaches a technique that is directly applicable in real corporate engagements where internal services are routinely assumed to be safe simply because they are not internet facing. That assumption fails the moment an attacker has a foothold. Thank you also for checking out the Cyber Overwatch channel. If you find this content informative and you are interested in cybersecurity, please like and subscribe to the Cyber Overwatch channel. If you have any questions, drop it in the comments or reach out through the Cyber Overwatch website linked in the description. Until next time, keep learning. The only way to improve is to keep learning. Pragmatic One, signing off.